Welcome. Welcome to this quiet place. This small pocket of the night that belongs entirely to you. If you are listening right now, there is a good chance you have found yourself in a familiar moment. Your body feels heavy. Your eyes are tired. The day has already taken its share of your energy. All the small tasks, the quiet stresses, the long hours of thinking and moving and responding to the world. And somewhere along the way, the tiredness settled into you, into your muscles, into your bones. And yet, here you are, still awake, still lying in the dark, waiting for sleep that seems to hover just beyond your reach. This experience can feel strangely confusing, because on the surface it doesn't make sense. You are exhausted. Your body knows it. Your eyes know it. Some deep, quiet part of you is whispering that it needs rest. And yet the mind keeps moving. Thoughts drift through it. A subtle alertness lingers beneath the surface. A quiet sense of wakefulness that refuses, somehow, to fully switch off. In moments like this, many people begin to wonder if something is wrong with them, if their body is somehow broken, if other people simply close their eyes and fall asleep effortlessly, while they remain here waiting. So let this be the first thing you hear tonight, said slowly and gently. Nothing is wrong with you. What is happening inside your body right now has a name. It has a science. And perhaps most importantly, it has a reason. Deep inside you, your nervous system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. For millions of years, this system has evolved with one purpose above all others: to keep you safe, to stay alert, to watch the world carefully, even when you would rather rest. And sometimes, in its tireless effort to protect you, it forgets to turn itself off when the day is done. Tonight, we're going to explore that together. Slowly, gently, without any hurry at all. We'll move through the landscape of your nervous system, understanding what it does, why it does it, and why this strange feeling of being tired but still awake is not a flaw in your design. In a quiet way, it is actually a feature. But before we go any further, I want you to do something very simple. Just notice where your body is right now. Notice the surface beneath you, the mattress, the pillow, the sofa, wherever you have settled for this moment. Feel the way your body is being supported. You don't have to hold yourself up. You don't have to brace against anything. The ground, the bed, the earth itself is already holding you. Take a slow breath in through your nose. Don't force it. Don't make it bigger than it wants to be. Just let the breath arrive gently, the way it always does. And then let it go. Good. Just like that. Now let's begin. There is something strangely poetic about the experience of being tired but unable to sleep. It feels like a contradiction, like trying to unlock a door that should open easily, but the key won't quite turn. And you've probably noticed that the harder you try to sleep, the further away it gets. That too has an explanation. That too makes sense when you understand what the brain is actually doing in those moments. But let's start at the very beginning, before we get into the late-night details of your nervous system. Let's start by thinking about what sleep actually is and why the body needs it so profoundly. Sleep is not simply a rest state. It's not just the brain going quiet and the body switching off. Sleep is an extraordinarily active process. While you sleep, your brain is consolidating memories, taking the scattered experiences of your day and weaving them into the longer story of who you are. Your body is repairing tissue, producing hormones, regulating your immune system, flushing waste products from your brain through a recently discovered network of channels called the glymphatic system. Sleep, in the truest sense of the word, is when your body heals. And the pressure to sleep, that heaviness you feel, that weight behind your eyes, is not just tiredness in the casual sense. It's a chemical signal, a literal accumulation of molecules inside your brain that are building up throughout the day, calling you toward rest. The molecule is called adenosine. Adenosine is a byproduct of cellular energy use. Every time a neuron fires, every time your brain processes information or generates a thought or coordinates a movement, tiny amounts of adenosine are released into the spaces between your brain cells. And adenosine is essentially a vote for sleep. The longer you've been awake, the more adenosine has accumulated, and the more powerful that call towards sleep becomes. Scientists call this the homeostatic sleep drive. It's the body's way of keeping track of how much rest it needs. Think of it like sand falling through an hourglass. Every hour you're awake, more sand falls. The pressure builds. The weight of it increases. And by the time evening comes, after a full day of wakefulness, the hourglass is heavy and full, and every cell in your body is asking for the release of sleep. You know this feeling. You've felt it. That particular weight of a long day when the couch looks like a sanctuary and your eyelids feel like they're being pulled downward by something gentle and inexorable. But here's the thing. Here's the part that gets complicated for so many people. The homeostatic sleep drive, all that beautiful accumulating adenosine, isn't the only system running in the background. There's another system, a counterforce, a second voice in the chorus that doesn't always sing the same song. That second voice is your nervous system's alarm system, and it's been running since long before human beings had comfortable beds or quiet bedrooms or the luxury of worrying about whether they'd be able to fall asleep. Let's talk about that. Your nervous system is one of the most elegant and complex things in the known universe. It consists of approximately 86 billion neurons, nerve cells, each one capable of sending and receiving thousands of signals per second. These neurons form connections with each other, vast networks of communication that make the internet look primitive by comparison. And woven through all of this is the autonomic nervous system, the part of your nervous system that runs in the background, below the level of conscious awareness, managing all the things your body does without being asked. Your heartbeat, your breathing, your digestion, the dilation and contraction of your pupils, the narrowing and widening of your blood vessels, the subtle shifting of blood flow to different organs depending on what's needed. All of this is handled automatically, continuously, without you having to think about it for even a moment. The autonomic nervous system has two primary branches. They work in balance with each other like two hands on a scale. The first is the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is your body's mobilization network. When it activates, it prepares you for action. It speeds your heart rate. It widens your airways so more oxygen can flow into your lungs. It redirects blood flow away from digestion and toward your muscles because muscles need fuel when you're moving. It releases hormones, adrenaline, noradrenaline, that sharpen your focus, heighten your senses, and make you feel alert and ready. The sympathetic nervous system is the reason your heart pounds when you hear an unexpected noise in the night. It's the reason your palms sweat before an important presentation. It's the reason time seems to slow down in moments of danger, because your brain is suddenly processing every detail of your environment with extraordinary precision. This system evolved over hundreds of millions of years in organisms that faced very real physical threats. Predators, sudden changes in weather, physical danger from rivals. The sympathetic nervous system was the difference between escape and death, between survival and disappearance. It is, in the most literal sense, one of the reasons you exist. The second branch of the autonomic nervous system is called the parasympathetic nervous system. And if the sympathetic system is the accelerator, the parasympathetic is the brakes. The parasympathetic nervous system is your body's rest and restoration network. When it's in charge, your heart rate slows. Your breathing deepens and becomes more regular. Digestion resumes. Your muscles release tension they've been holding all day. Blood flow returns to organs of maintenance and repair. The body shifts from a state of readiness into a state of replenishment. Scientists sometimes call this state rest and digest. And it's in this state, when the parasympathetic nervous system has the upper hand, when the brakes are gently applied, that sleep becomes possible. Not just possible, natural, easy. The body wants to tip into sleep when the parasympathetic system is dominant, the way a leaf wants to fall from a tree when the wind is still. The problem, the beautiful, complicated problem, is that the two systems are constantly negotiating with each other. And in the modern world, the sympathetic system often gets stuck in a kind of low-level activation that it can't quite turn off, even when the body is tired, even when the day is done, even when you're lying in a quiet room waiting for sleep to come. And that is exactly the experience we're here to understand tonight. Let me paint a picture for you. Imagine you are a human being living 50,000 years ago. You've spent the day hunting, gathering, caring for your group. You've been alert all day, scanning the landscape for threats and opportunities, navigating the complex social world of your small tribe. You're tired. Your muscles ache pleasantly from the work. The sun is setting and the air is cooling, and you know that night is coming. But you also know that night carries its own dangers. The darkness that brings sleep also brings predators. It brings the unknown sounds of the forest. It brings a vulnerability that the daylight hours don't have. So your nervous system does something extraordinary. As tired as you are, it keeps a part of itself listening, keeps the alarm system lightly engaged, even as the rest of your body is sinking toward rest. It posts a kind of internal sentinel, a watchman, who will wake you instantly if something changes. This is a feature. This kept your ancestors alive through countless dark nights when real threats lurked in the shadows. But here's what's happened in the tens of thousands of years since then. The threats have changed, but the nervous system hasn't. The predators are gone. The darkness of your bedroom is safe. There's nothing out there in the night that you need to run from or fight. But your nervous system doesn't know that with complete certainty, can't fully verify it, and so it keeps part of itself ready, keeps the alarm system lightly humming, just in case. And then there's something else, something that your ancestors never had to contend with: modern life. Because your sympathetic nervous system can't actually tell the difference between a physical predator and a difficult email. It can't distinguish between the danger of a charging animal and the anxiety of a long to-do list, the stress of a conversation that went badly, the worry about a bill that needs to be paid, the slow background hum of uncertainty about the future. These all register in the nervous system as a kind of threat. Not an emergency, perhaps, but a signal, a warning, a reason to stay alert. And so you come to bed at the end of a day that contained no tigers, no physical danger, perhaps no acute crisis at all, and yet your sympathetic nervous system is still running, still buzzing, still poised on the edge of readiness, because it spent all day responding to the subtle threats and demands and uncertainties of a modern human life. Your body is tired. The adenosine has built up. The homeostatic sleep drive is strong, but the alarm system is still on. And these two forces, the need for sleep and the vigilance of a nervous system that hasn't quite stood down, pull in opposite directions. You feel it as that peculiar sensation of exhaustion combined with restlessness. Heavy but awake, tired but wired. There is a name for this in sleep science. It's called hyperarousal. And it's one of the most common and most deeply misunderstood aspects of sleep difficulty. Before we go deeper into hyperarousal, let me invite you to notice your body again. Just for a moment, notice your breathing. You've been breathing this whole time without thinking about it. In and out, in and out. The body just does it. You don't have to remind yourself. You don't have to manage it. It happens. And if you bring your attention to the breath right now, not to change it, just to notice it, you might find that the mere act of paying attention to it causes it to deepen slightly. The breath slows a little. The exhale grows a little longer. That's your parasympathetic nervous system beginning to stir. The breath is one of the few bodily functions that is both automatic and under conscious control. You can't choose when your heart beats. You can't decide to start or stop digesting your food. But you can choose to breathe slowly. And that gives you a direct line into your autonomic nervous system, a way to shift the balance from sympathetic toward parasympathetic, from alertness toward rest. We'll come back to this. But for now, just let the breath do what it wants to do. Don't hold it, don't force it. Let it move through you like the tide moving through a still harbor. Hyperarousal. The word sounds clinical, but the experience is something almost everyone recognizes. Research into the neuroscience of insomnia has consistently found that one of the core features of difficulty sleeping is a nervous system that is running at a higher baseline level of arousal than it should be, not just at bedtime, but across the entire day. People who struggle to sleep tend to have measurably elevated heart rates, higher body temperatures, increased levels of high-frequency brain activity, and altered patterns of stress hormone secretion, not only in the middle of the night, but during the middle of the afternoon too. This isn't something they're imagining. It's measurable. It's physiological. Their nervous systems are genuinely operating at a higher state of readiness than those who sleep easily. And interestingly, this elevated arousal isn't necessarily the cause of sleep difficulty in a simple, linear way. It's more of a loop. The nervous system is more activated, which makes sleep harder to achieve. And then the experience of not sleeping well becomes itself a source of stress and concern, which activates the nervous system further. The fear of not sleeping creates more of the very arousal that makes sleep difficult. It's a gentle trap, a feedback loop that can become self-reinforcing if you don't understand what's happening. But here's the beautiful thing about understanding it. The moment you recognize the loop, you can begin to step outside of it. Because when you know that your nervous system is simply doing its job, running the same ancient programming it has always run, trying to keep you safe in the only way it knows how. The frustration softens. The fear of not sleeping begins to loosen its grip. And when fear loosens its grip, the alarm system gets a little quieter. Let's understand the biology of this more deeply. When your sympathetic nervous system activates, it doesn't just change your heart rate and breathing. It changes the chemistry of your brain. It releases a cascade of neurotransmitters, chemical messengers, that shift the entire state of your neural activity. Adrenaline and noradrenaline flood the system. These hormones increase the firing rate of neurons across the brain. They make you more sensitive to stimulation, more likely to notice sounds, more likely to be pulled out of the beginning of sleep by a small noise or a passing thought. They increase brain temperature slightly, and the brain needs to cool down to fall asleep deeply. They also, critically, keep the thinking mind running at full speed. This is why, when you're in that hyperaroused state, the thoughts won't stop. Your mind keeps reviewing the day, rehearsing conversations, making lists, solving problems, circling back to worries it's already passed through once or twice. It's not that your mind is being difficult or irrational. It's that noradrenaline is a powerful activator of the prefrontal cortex, the planning and problem-solving center of your brain. And your brain, flooded with this signal, is quite literally trying to protect you by staying one step ahead of every possible challenge. It's loyalty, misguided loyalty perhaps, but loyalty. Your nervous system is in your corner. It has always been in your corner. It is trying so hard and so persistently to make sure that you are okay. There's another part of this story that happens even deeper inside your body. Not in the wiring of your neurons, but in the chemistry of your blood and the slow rhythms of your hormones. It's time to talk about cortisol. Cortisol is often described as the stress hormone, and while that's accurate in some contexts, it's a somewhat unfair characterization, because cortisol isn't just the hormone of stress. It's one of the most important and versatile hormones in the human body, and it has a profound and beautifully precise relationship with the timing of sleep and wakefulness. Here's how it works. Deep in the center of your brain, in the region called the hypothalamus, there's a tiny cluster of neurons known as the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It's sometimes abbreviated as the SCN. This small but enormously important structure contains your body's master clock, the central circadian pacemaker that keeps every cell in your body synchronized to a 24-hour cycle. The word circadian comes from the Latin circadies, meaning approximately 1 day, and this internal clock is remarkably precise, ticking away through all the hours of light and darkness, keeping your biology aligned with the rotation of the Earth. The suprachiasmatic nucleus receives information about light directly from specialized cells in your retinas, cells that don't form images but instead detect the overall brightness of the environment and report it back to the master clock. When light levels fall in the evening, this signal is received by the SCN, which uses it to coordinate a cascade of hormonal changes. One of the most important of these changes involves cortisol. Under normal circumstances, your cortisol levels follow a very specific daily arc. They are at their lowest point around midnight. Then, as the night progresses toward morning, cortisol begins to rise slowly, reaching a peak roughly 30 to 45 minutes after you wake up in the morning. This peak, sometimes called the cortisol awakening response, is actually a biological alarm clock. It's a surge of cortisol that mobilizes your energy reserves, sharpens your focus, and prepares your body for the demands of the day ahead. Throughout the morning and afternoon, cortisol gradually declines. By early evening, it should be relatively low enough to allow the parasympathetic nervous system to take over, to allow the temperature of your core body to begin dropping, to allow melatonin to begin rising in the darkness of your room, and to allow the whole biological machinery of sleep to engage. This is how it's supposed to work. This is the elegant daily rhythm your body has evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. But when the sympathetic nervous system is chronically activated, when stress, anxiety, and the persistent demands of modern life keep the alarm system running at a low hum all day, cortisol doesn't follow that smooth downward arc. It stays elevated later into the evening than it should. It creeps into the hours when it should be at its lowest. And cortisol, remember, is a mobilizing hormone. It's a wakefulness hormone. It signals the body to stay ready, to stay energized, to stay alert. High cortisol in the evening is one of the physiological signatures of that experienced exhaustion coupled with the inability to fall asleep. Your body has been awake all day. The adenosine has been building. The homeostatic pressure for sleep is real and strong. But the cortisol that's supposed to have faded by now hasn't fully retreated. And so you lie in the dark, feeling the contradiction, the weight of tiredness and the buzz of biochemical wakefulness, wondering how these two things can exist in the same body at the same time. They can because they're regulated by different systems, and sometimes those systems fall out of sync. But there's another player in this story, a small, mysterious gland nestled deep in the center of your brain, not much larger than a pine cone. The pineal gland. The pineal gland produces melatonin, the hormone that many people associate with sleep. And melatonin is indeed an important part of the sleep story, though perhaps not in the way most people think. Melatonin is sometimes called the darkness hormone, and that name is more accurate than calling it the sleep hormone, because melatonin doesn't directly cause you to fall asleep the way a sedative does. It doesn't shut down consciousness. Instead, it does something subtler and more elegant. It acts as a signal, a message that darkness has arrived, sent from the pineal gland to the suprachiasmatic nucleus and to receptors throughout the brain and body. When melatonin begins to rise in your bloodstream, which normally happens about 2 hours before your typical bedtime, in the gathering darkness of the evening, it sends a message. It is nighttime. The light-dark cycle has turned. Begin preparing for rest. And in response to that message, your circadian clock begins to lower the alerting signal it puts out during the day. Throughout the daytime, the SCN actively promotes wakefulness. It sends signals that keep you sharp and engaged, that counteract the building sleepiness of accumulated adenosine. But when melatonin arrives, the SCN's wake-promoting signal weakens. The counterforce against sleepiness fades. And the homeostatic sleep pressure that has been building all day can finally do what it's been trying to do. Pull you into sleep. The sleep gate opens. But here's the crucial thing. Melatonin's message can be disrupted, can be blocked, delayed, suppressed by light, specifically by light in the short wavelength, blue end of the visible spectrum, the kind of light that comes from phone screens, from computer monitors, from the energy-efficient LED lighting that fills so many modern homes and offices. This specific quality of light blue light is precisely the kind that the specialized cells in your retinas are most sensitive to. is the kind of light that, in nature, signals midday sun, peak wakefulness time, the opposite of the dim, warm, red-orange light of sunset that your eyes would have seen for most of human evolutionary history as the day drew to a close. When your eyes are exposed to this blue-rich light in the evening, the retinal cells send their signal to the suprachiasmatic nucleus. It is still daytime. Continue the wakefulness program. The SCN relays that message to the pineal gland. Not yet. Hold the melatonin. And so the melatonin is delayed. The sleep gate stays closed a little longer than it should. The circadian signal for rest gets pushed back. And you find yourself lying in bed at an hour that feels late, feeling like you should be sleepy, but the biological machinery of sleep onset hasn't fully engaged because the light environment of your evening told your ancient brain that it was still noon. This is not a small thing. This is one of the most significant contributors to the epidemic of poor sleep in the modern world. Not because people are weak or undisciplined, but because the environment in which we evolved and the environment in which we now live are profoundly mismatched in this one specific and consequential way. Let's pause here for a moment and return to your breath. In the silence between these words, let yourself sink just a little bit deeper into wherever you are lying. Imagine that with every exhale, you are releasing something. Not dramatically, not as an effort, just gently. The way a fist slowly opens when there is nothing left to hold. The way a sigh releases at the end of a long day without you deciding to sigh. Just the natural opening that happens when tension has no more reason to be there. Your shoulders might be carrying a little weight they don't need to carry tonight. You don't have to fix this or do anything about it. Just notice it. Sometimes noticing is enough. Sometimes the body simply releases what it's been holding as soon as it knows it's been seen. Breathe in slowly and let the breath go. Good. Now I want to take you deeper into the brain's relationship with safety, because this is at the heart of everything we've been discussing. And understanding it may be one of the most genuinely calming things you can learn tonight. Your brain is, above all things, a prediction machine. Every moment of every day, it is taking in information from your senses, comparing it to patterns stored in memory, and making predictions about what is likely to happen next. It's doing this to keep you safe. It's doing this so that you don't have to consciously process every single piece of information in your environment, so you can move through the world fluidly, reacting to things before they've even fully registered in your conscious awareness. Buried in the center of your brain, in the temporal lobe, is a small, almond-shaped structure called the amygdala. You might have heard of it. The amygdala has been described as the brain's alarm system, and while that's a simplification, it captures something real. The amygdala is deeply involved in detecting threats in the environment, in triggering rapid fear responses before the slower, more deliberate parts of the brain have had time to evaluate the situation. The amygdala doesn't wait for conscious assessment. It fires fast. It acts on pattern recognition, on the quick, automatic scanning of the environment for anything that matches past experiences of danger. A sudden loud noise, a movement in peripheral vision, a tone of voice that sounds hostile. These things can activate the amygdala and begin the cascade of sympathetic nervous system activation in a fraction of a second. Faster than thought, faster than language. And here's the important thing about the amygdala in the context of sleep. It doesn't go completely offline at night. Research has shown that the sleeping brain continues to monitor the environment for threats. This is why a mother wakes to the soft cry of her infant through the sound of traffic, but sleeps through a much louder sound that carries no personal significance. The sleeping brain is still sorting signals, still applying the pattern recognition filters of the amygdala, still deciding what needs attention and what can be ignored. In people with high levels of sympathetic activation, in people whose nervous systems are in that state of hyperarousal we've been talking about, the amygdala's alarm threshold is lower. It takes less to trigger it. A soft creak of the house, a passing car, a shift in the quality of the silence. These can be enough to jolt the brain out of the early stages of sleep. And then there's something even more interesting, something that plays out specifically in the form of sleep that may be most vulnerable to disruption. REM sleep, rapid eye movement sleep, is the stage associated with vivid dreaming, with emotional processing, and with a peculiar paradox. The brain during REM sleep is highly active, in some ways more active than during wakefulness. The pattern of brain activity during REM is so similar to wakefulness that early researchers sometimes struggled to distinguish them. In people with chronic sleep difficulty, REM sleep tends to be fragmented. The brain during REM keeps waking up to check whether it's actually safe. It keeps generating brief moments of consciousness that interrupt the normal cycling of sleep stages. And because REM sleep is deeply involved in processing emotional memories, in taking the emotional charge out of difficult experiences and filing them away more peacefully, this fragmentation of REM sleep means that the emotional weight of the day doesn't fully resolve overnight. You wake up carrying more of what you went to bed with, and an accumulation of unresolved emotional distress, it turns out, is one of the things that feeds the state of hyperarousal. Not just in the moments when you're lying awake and thinking about it, but neurobiologically, it becomes part of the background hum of the nervous system's alertness. This too is not a flaw. The brain's insistence on processing difficult emotions, on returning to unresolved things until they are integrated, is an act of psychological caretaking. It's the mind trying to do its housekeeping, trying to bring itself to balance. But when the sleep that should enable that processing is itself disrupted by the very states it's trying to resolve, well, that's when the loop becomes unhelpful. Understanding this loop, seeing it clearly and without judgment, is the first step towards stepping outside of it. There's a structure in your nervous system that deserves special attention tonight because it connects directly to your breath and your heart and your sense of safety and your ability to rest. It's called the vagus nerve. The word vagus comes from Latin and it means wandering. It's an apt name for the longest and most complex of the 12 cranial nerves. A nerve that originates in your brainstem and wanders down through your neck, through your chest, connecting to your heart and lungs, and continuing all the way down into your abdomen, touching your stomach, your intestines, your liver, and kidneys along the way. The vagus nerve is the main highway of the parasympathetic nervous system. It carries signals in both directions, from the brain down to the organs, telling them to slow down and rest, and from the organs back up to the brain, carrying information about the state of the body that the brain uses to assess safety. When the vagus nerve is active and healthy, when what scientists call vagal tone is high, the body is in a state of genuine calm. Heart rate variability is good. The heart speeds up slightly when you inhale and slows when you exhale, a gentle rhythm that reflects the vagus nerve's fine-tuning of cardiac function. Inflammation is lower, digestion works smoothly, and the brain receives a constant, quiet signal from the body that says, "Things are okay. You are safe. You can rest." When vagal tone is low, when the vagus nerve is underactive relative to the sympathetic system, that signal of safety is diminished. the brain doesn't receive the reassurance it needs, and the alarm system stays on a little louder, a little more persistently. But here's the beautiful thing about the vagus nerve, the thing that gives us something genuinely useful tonight. You can stimulate it voluntarily, right now, just by changing the way you breathe. The vagus nerve runs through a hole in the diaphragm, the large dome-shaped muscle that sits at the base of your lungs and does most of the work of breathing. When the diaphragm moves, when it contracts and expands with a deep, slow breath, it directly stimulates the vagus nerve. And when the vagus nerve is stimulated, it releases a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine, which is the primary chemical messenger of the parasympathetic system. Acetylcholine says, slow down, settle, rest. This is why slow, deep, diaphragmatic breathing works. This is why every relaxation practice, every meditation tradition, every yoga lineage that has ever existed has placed emphasis on the breath. It's not mysticism, it's physiology. A slow, deep exhale literally puts the brakes on your sympathetic nervous system and activates the rest and restore mode of your parasympathetic system. And the exhale specifically is the key. When you inhale, your heart rate speeds up slightly, a normal phenomenon called respiratory sinus arrhythmia. When you exhale, your heart rate slows. The longer your exhale relative to your inhale, the more pronounced this slowing becomes, and the more powerfully it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. This is why sighing feels so releasing, because a sigh, that long, deep exhale, is one of the body's natural vagal reset mechanisms. It's the nervous system's built-in way of saying, I was tense and now I am releasing. You can do this now. There's no effort required. Just let the next exhale be a little longer than the inhale. Not forced, not effortful, just a little longer, like letting the water level drop slowly in a glass. In through the nose, and out, slowly, through slightly parted lips. Good. Keep breathing like that for a moment. Natural in and a long, slow out. Notice how the body responds. Notice if there is any softening, any settling, any gentle release that happens without you having to arrange it. We've been exploring the nervous system tonight, and I want to continue to go deeper to understand the remarkable system that lives inside you. But first I want to make something clear. The science we're discussing isn't meant to give you something new to worry about. It's not a list of things going wrong. Every single mechanism we've talked about, the sympathetic activation, the elevated cortisol, the hyperarousal, the fragmented REM sleep, every single one of these is an expression of a nervous system that is doing its best. Your body is not working against you. It has never been working against you. The alertness that keeps you from sleeping easily is the same alertness that has kept human beings alive through every difficult night in our evolutionary history. The sensitivity of your amygdala is the same sensitivity that allows you to be moved by beauty, to feel deep connection with other people, to care about what happens in the world. The stress response that floods you with noradrenaline when things feel threatening is the same response that would allow you to act with tremendous speed and strength if you ever faced a genuine emergency. These systems are not flaws. They are features. Deeply ancient, deeply adaptive features. The problem is simply one of calibration, of a system that was designed for a different kind of world, running in a world that looks very different and doing its very best to keep up. And you, lying here in this quiet room, this safe and still room, you are not in danger. Whatever the challenges of your life, Whatever the worries that have followed you to bed tonight, you are here. Your body is warm. You are breathing. The night is around you and it is gentle, and you do not need to be ready for anything right now. You can tell your nervous system that, not by trying to force it into submission, but by speaking to it in the language it understands. The language of the breath, the language of stillness, the language of a slow heartbeat and relaxed muscles and a mind that is willing to let the night do its work. Let's talk about what happens as sleep approaches. The specific, beautiful sequence of events that unfolds when the conditions are right and the nervous system finally agrees to let go. It begins with temperature. Your core body temperature needs to drop in order for sleep to come easily. This is why cool bedrooms tend to support better sleep than warm ones. As evening approaches and melatonin rises and the SCN's wake-promoting signals begin to fade, your body begins redirecting blood flow to the surface of your skin, to your hands and feet in particular. This is the body dissipating heat, releasing it through the skin and into the surrounding air, cooling the core. You may have noticed that warm hands and feet are often a sign of sleepiness. This counterintuitive finding that warmth at the periphery signals approaching sleep is because that warmth is actually the heat leaving your core. The blood flowing to the surface of your extremities is literally carrying heat away from the central organs, cooling you down into sleep. The core body temperature needs to drop by approximately 1 to 2 degrees Fahrenheit for deep sleep to initiate. This cooling is one of the reasons that the environment matters. A room that is too warm doesn't allow the body to shed heat, and sleep remains shallow and fragmented. A cooler room, between about 65 and 68 degrees Fahrenheit, supports the body's natural temperature drop and makes the transition to deep sleep smoother. Feel your hands right now if you can. Feel whether there is any warmth in them. That warmth, if it's there, is the body already doing this work, already beginning to prepare. As the core temperature drops, brain wave activity begins to slow. In the final moments before sleep, your brain transitions from the high-frequency beta waves of active thinking into slower alpha waves, the relaxed, unfocused state of daydreaming, of being pleasantly lost in thought. If you've ever been watching television and found your mind drifting somewhere else without meaning to, you know the feeling of alpha waves. From alpha, the brain moves into theta, even slower, even more diffuse. In the theta state, you are in the hypnagogic zone. That odd, liminal space between wakefulness and sleep where thoughts begin to take on a dreamlike quality, where images emerge unbidden, where the logic of ordinary consciousness begins to loosen its grip. You might have sudden, brief muscle jerks in this state. They're called hypnic jerks, and they're entirely normal, so normal that they happen to virtually everyone. One theory is that they're a remnant of the transition from arboreal life, when our ancestors slept in trees and the brain needed to check, at the threshold of unconsciousness, that the body was safely positioned. The hypnic jerk was the brain making sure you hadn't started to fall. And then, if the conditions are right, if the sympathetic system has quieted enough, if the alarm threshold has dropped and the nighttime chemistry is doing its work, the theta waves give way to the slow, rolling delta waves of deep sleep, and consciousness fades, and you are gone briefly into the vast and restorative dark of genuine rest. This sequence takes time. It is not instantaneous. The body moves through these stages gradually, like water finding its level. And any activation of the sympathetic system, any spike of alertness, any jolt of concern, can push you back up through the stages toward the surface. This is why the race to fall asleep never works. The effort itself activates the very system you're trying to quiet. The harder you chase sleep, the more alert you become. The way to let it come is to stop chasing it. To let the conditions be as favorable as you can make them: cool room, dark environment, slow breath, relaxed body, and then to simply wait. Not anxiously, not with a running clock in your head. Just to be present, gently, in the warmth and quiet of the night, while the body does what it knows how to do. I want to speak to you for a moment about something that lies underneath all of these biological processes. Something that doesn't show up in the measurements of cortisol or the firing rates of neurons, but that is real nonetheless. There is often, in the experience of lying awake, a kind of loneliness. Not the loneliness of being alone. Many people lie awake beside partners, in full houses, in cities loud with life, but a particular quality of aloneness that the nighttime brings. A sense of being the only one still awake in a world that has moved on without you into sleep and dreams, and the easy unconsciousness that everyone else seems to access without effort. And in that loneliness, there is sometimes a quiet grief. For the rest you're not getting, for the tiredness you're carrying, for the cumulative weight of nights that have gone like this one, quiet and awake and wondering when it will get easier. I want you to know that if you felt that, you are not alone in feeling it. Millions of people around the world are lying awake at this very moment, in their own quiet rooms, in their own particular exhaustion and wakefulness, wondering what they're doing wrong. You're not doing anything wrong. You are a remarkably sensitive human being whose nervous system takes its job very seriously. You are alive in a world that generates a tremendous amount of stimulation and demand. And you're trying, with a biological system designed for a simpler kind of life, to navigate all of that. That deserves a kind of gentleness. Not the forced gentleness of telling yourself to calm down, or the performed gentleness of pretending everything is fine, but genuine softness toward yourself, toward the body that is tired, toward the mind that is running, toward the whole complicated, endlessly effortful project of being a human being alive right now. You have been working hard today, at whatever it was you were doing, thinking, feeling, managing, navigating. You've been doing a lot, and some of the charge of the day is still with you, still being processed, still finding its way toward resolution. That's okay. You don't need to resolve it right now. You don't need to finish it or fix it or understand it before you sleep. The night will hold it for you. The morning will be there. There will be time. For now, all you need to do is be here, in this room, in this body, in this specific, unrepeatable moment of a quiet night. Let's go back into the science for a little while, because there's more I want to share with you, more of the remarkable story of what your brain and body are doing right now. We talked about cortisol and how its rhythm can get disrupted. But there's another way to think about the relationship between stress, time, and sleep, and it comes from a concept called allostatic load. Allostasis is the body's ability to maintain stability through change. Unlike homeostasis, which describes a static balance point, allostasis is about dynamic adjustment, the constant calibration of the body's systems in response to the demands being placed on them. Every stressor you experience asks your body to mobilize, to release cortisol, to activate the sympathetic system, to redirect resources toward the acute challenge at hand. And normally, this mobilization is followed by recovery. a return to a lower state of arousal once the challenge has passed. But when stressors are chronic, when they pile up faster than the recovery can happen, when the nervous system never gets a real chance to return to baseline, the cumulative cost of all that mobilization begins to accumulate. Scientists call this allostatic load. The load your body is carrying from all the times it's been asked to rev up and hasn't fully come back down. High allostatic load shows up in the body in measurable ways. Elevated resting cortisol, lower heart rate variability, more reactive stress responses, meaning it takes less to trigger the alarm system, and it takes longer to turn it off once it's been triggered. It also shows up as that particular feeling of exhaustion that doesn't resolve with ordinary rest. Because it's not just physical tiredness you're carrying. It's the accumulated cost of a nervous system that has been working hard for a long time. The good news is that this load can decrease. Sleep itself is one of the primary mechanisms by which allostatic load is reduced. Deep sleep, particularly the slow-wave restorative stages of non-REM sleep, is when cortisol reaches its lowest levels, when growth hormone is released, when the brain clears its metabolic waste through the glymphatic system, and when the overall calibration of the stress response is reset. This is part of why poor sleep is self-perpetuating. The sleep that would reduce the allostatic load is prevented by the very arousal that the allostatic load creates. But it's also why even partial improvements in sleep quality, even nights that are a little deeper, a little more restorative, can begin to shift the balance. Recovery is not a switch that flips all at once. It's a gradual turning of a tide. Every moment of genuine rest you give your nervous system tonight, even if you never fully fall into a deep, uninterrupted sleep, is a small deposit in an account that matters. I want to talk for a moment about something called the two-process model of sleep regulation, because it gives us a useful map for understanding the system we've been discussing. This model, developed by the Swiss sleep researcher Alexander Borbély in 1982 and refined many times since, describes sleep regulation as the interaction of two independent processes. Process 1 is the homeostatic drive, the adenosine-mediated pressure for sleep that builds throughout the day and dissipates during sleep. We've already spent some time here. This is the hourglass. The sand accumulates while you're awake, and sleep is what empties the glass. Process 2 is the circadian rhythm, the internal clock in the suprachiasmatic nucleus that modulates your overall level of arousal and sleepiness according to the time of day, independent of how long you've been awake. Crucially, these two processes don't just add together. They interact. And in a healthy system, they work in a beautifully coordinated way. The circadian alerting signal is strongest in the early evening, precisely when homeostatic sleep pressure is at its peak from a long day of wakefulness. This is the body's way of preventing you from falling asleep too early, of keeping you functional and alert through the evening hours. And then, as the circadian clock shifts into its nighttime mode, the alerting signal drops away, and the accumulated sleep pressure, no longer opposed, sweeps you into sleep. This clever arrangement, where the circadian system seems to work against sleep during the day and in favor of it at night, is why sleep in healthy people tends to be consolidated into a single long block rather than scattered throughout the day. The two processes conspire to push you into sleep at night and keep you awake during the day. But when the circadian clock is disrupted, when the timing signals get confused by irregular schedules, by late-night light exposure, by shift work or travel across time zones, this coordination breaks down. The alerting signal might persist too late into the night, or it might drop too early in the afternoon, leading to that mid-afternoon slump that many people recognize as a point of particular vulnerability. Or the homeostatic pressure might be low because of a late wake time, so that at bedtime there simply isn't enough sleep pressure built up to overcome a still active circadian alerting signal. Understanding this is useful not as a diagnosis, but as a source of information. It suggests that one of the most powerful things you can do for your sleep is to be consistent, to keep your sleep and wake times regular, to expose yourself to bright light in the morning, to create a gentle wind down in the evenings that aligns with the natural trajectory of the circadian system. These things aren't rigid rules. They're ways of giving your internal clock the cues it needs to coordinate the two processes properly, of helping the timing system and the homeostatic system sing together rather than working at cross purposes. Let's breathe together for a moment. I want to offer you a very simple practice, not a technique with requirements or correct ways to do it, just an invitation. Close your eyes if they aren't already closed. Let the weight of your body settle into the surface beneath you. You don't have to arrange yourself or get comfortable in any particular way. Just let gravity do what gravity always does, and feel the support of whatever is holding you. Now bring your attention to your belly, not your chest, your belly, the soft part below your ribs. When you inhale, let your belly gently expand. Don't force it. Just allow the breath to move downward into the diaphragm and let the belly follow. And when you exhale, let the belly softly fall. Belly rises on the inhale. Belly falls on the exhale. Just this. Just the gentle tide of the breath moving through your body. In. Every time you exhale, the vagus nerve carries its quiet message through the length of your body. It is safe. You are held. The night is gentle. You can rest. Your brain has a prediction system that runs constantly. We touched on this earlier when we talked about the amygdala. But I want to go deeper because this is one of the most fascinating aspects of the neuroscience of sleep and arousal, and understanding it may shift something for you. The brain is what neuroscientists call a predictive processing machine. It doesn't passively receive information from the world. It actively constructs a model of the world, a constantly updated prediction of what is happening and what is likely to happen next, and compares incoming sensory information to that prediction. Most of the time, sensory input matches the prediction well enough, and the brain doesn't need to do much work. Life proceeds smoothly. The background programs run without interruption. But when sensory input doesn't match the prediction, when something unexpected arrives, when there is a mismatch between what was expected and what is actually happening, the brain generates what's called a prediction error. And prediction errors are handled by a network of structures including the amygdala, the locus coeruleus, and the prefrontal cortex, which together assess the significance of the mismatch. Is this a threat? Is this important? Should the body mobilize? This is the mechanism by which your brain scans continuously for danger, not through deliberate conscious attention, but through the automatic comparison of expectation and reality. When the environment is as expected, quiet room, familiar smells, the feel of known blankets, the distant sounds of a neighborhood that is also at rest, the prediction errors are minimal, the amygdala stays quiet, and the sympathetic system remains low. But when the environment is unfamiliar, a new room, an unusual sound, an uncanny quiet where there is normally noise, the brain generates more prediction errors, more activity in the amygdala, more vigilance. And here's the subtle version of this that is relevant to what many people experience at night. The brain's threat prediction system isn't only triggered by external signals, it can be triggered by internal ones, by the sense of being unwell, by the perception of one's own heart beating harder or faster than expected, by the feeling of being awake when the brain's own model says it should be sleeping. When you lie awake and notice that you're not sleeping, and when that noticing becomes a concern, I should be asleep by now, I'm going to be exhausted tomorrow, why can't I do this simple thing? That concern is itself a prediction error. Your brain expects sleep. Sleep has not arrived. The mismatch generates a small alarm signal, and the alarm signal activates the sympathetic system just enough to push sleep a little further away. This is the cruelest part of the loop. The worry about not sleeping keeps you awake, which gives you more to worry about. But here too, the predictive brain offers us a way out, because the prediction system is update-able. It learns. And one of the things it can learn slowly, gently, through repetition, is that wakefulness in the night is not a crisis. That lying awake is uncomfortable but not dangerous. That the night will pass. That rest is happening even without full sleep. The body is still resting, the heart rate is still lower than it is during the day, the muscles are still relaxing. The brain can learn that this is okay, and you can help it learn that tonight simply by being with the experience without fighting it. Not enjoying it necessarily, not performing acceptance, just not treating it as an emergency, just letting the night be what it is and trusting that the body knows how to do what it needs to do, even when you're not consciously managing it. The body knows how to sleep. It has been doing this for your entire life and for the lives of every ancestor you've ever had. Sleep is more ancient than consciousness, predates mammals, predates vertebrates. Even the simplest organisms, the ones with nothing resembling a brain, have periods of reduced activity and recovery that look remarkably like sleep. You were born knowing how to sleep. Infants, in the very first weeks of life, spend the majority of their time cycling between sleep stages, their small brains doing the enormous work of development under the cover of rest. You did this. Your body knows this. The capacity is still there. What sometimes interferes is not a broken capacity, but a nervous system caught in a loop, an ancient alarm system that hasn't received the memo that the dangers of the night are gone. And the way to send that memo isn't through effort or will. It's through signal. The signal of slow breathing. The signal of a cool, dark room. The signal of muscles allowed to release. The signal of a mind that is willing to let its thoughts pass through without grabbing hold of each one and pulling it back for examination. Thoughts will come tonight. They always do in the quiet of the night, when the distractions of the day have fallen away and the mind turns back to its unfinished business. This is normal. This is the brain doing its processing work. The practice is not to suppress these thoughts or to fight them. It's to watch them from a slight distance, the way you might watch clouds moving across a dark sky. They arrive, they drift, they pass. You don't have to attach to each one. You don't have to follow every thread to its end tonight. Let the thoughts be there. Let them move and return gently to the breath, and to the weight of your body, and to the quiet of the room, and to the simple, unremarkable miracle of being alive in this moment, in this body, on this night. there are other rhythms in the body worth understanding as we move deeper into the night together. The brain doesn't sleep in one continuous, undifferentiated state. It moves through a series of distinct stages, cycling through them approximately every 90 minutes across the course of the night. The first stage is the hypnagogic transition we talked about earlier. Light sleep, the drift toward unconsciousness. The second stage is a deeper non-REM sleep characterized by specific electrical patterns called sleep spindles and K-complexes. Sleep spindles are brief, rapid bursts of neural activity. You can imagine them as the brain's way of doing quick internal processing, a sort of rapid filing of information. K-complexes are larger, slower waves that are thought to represent the brain's response to sensory stimulation, a way of deciding whether an incoming signal requires attention or can be ignored. From stage 2, the brain drops into the deepest stages of non-REM sleep, sometimes called slow-wave sleep or deep sleep. This is where the delta waves roll through the brain in long, slow swells. The body is deeply still. The heart rate is at its lowest. Growth hormone is released. The glymphatic system pumps cerebrospinal fluid through the brain, washing away the metabolic waste, including, notably, the proteins associated with Alzheimer's disease that has accumulated during the day. This deep sleep is the most physically restorative. It's where the body does its most intensive repair work, and it tends to be concentrated in the first half of the night. Then comes REM sleep, that paradoxical stage where the brain is busy and the body is still, where the eyes move rapidly beneath closed lids and most of the body's voluntary muscles are briefly paralyzed to prevent you from acting out your dreams. REM sleep is associated with memory consolidation, particularly the consolidation of procedural and emotional memories. It's where the emotional coloring of experiences gets processed and, in healthy sleep, somewhat resolved. REM sleep is more concentrated in the second half of the night. If you sleep for 8 hours, you'll get more deep sleep in the first 4 hours and more REM sleep in the last 4. This has a practical implication. Sleep that is cut short doesn't just lose equal portions of all stages. It disproportionately loses REM sleep from the final hours. And REM sleep, with its role in emotional processing and memory consolidation, is not the kind of sleep you can afford to lose regularly without consequences for your mood, your cognitive sharpness, and your ability to feel emotionally regulated. This is part of why even one fewer hour of sleep than your body needs can have a noticeable effect on your emotional state the following day. Not just because you're tired in a general sense, but because specific neurobiological processes that depend on REM have been cut short. The body knows this and responds accordingly. Given the opportunity, it will try to recover the lost REM sleep on subsequent nights, extending the REM phases if it gets the chance. The brain keeps its own accounts. Let me ask you something, and you don't need to answer it out loud. Just let the question settle into you. When was the last time you felt truly rested? Not just a morning after which you had enough energy to get through the day, but genuinely rested. That quality of rest where you wake up and there's a kind of ease in your body, a softness in your mind, a sense that the night has done something real for you. For some people, that moment feels recent. For others, it might feel like a memory from a different era of their life. From childhood, perhaps, or from some vacation long ago when the demands of ordinary life lifted for a little while. Wherever that memory lives for you, hold it gently. The body remembers what that feels like. and the body wants to feel that again. The desire for rest is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's the nervous system with all its complexity and all its ancient programming, asking for what it most fundamentally needs. I want to walk you through something now. A kind of slow, gentle inventory of the body. Not a formal practice with rules, but just a way of visiting each part of yourself and releasing any holding that might still be there. We'll start with your face. The face holds so much tension, so much expression held unconsciously. The muscles of the forehead and jaw and eyes carrying the residue of conversations and concentrations and emotions from throughout the day. Let the muscles of your face go soft. Let the space between your eyebrows smooth out. Let the muscles of your jaw release. Let your teeth part slightly if they haven't already. Let your lips part just barely. Let the skin of your forehead feel heavy and smooth. If you notice tension there, you don't need to fight it. Just notice it and breathe into that space. And let the exhale carry some of it away. Now your shoulders. Shoulders are another place where tension makes its home. We carry so much in the shoulders: responsibility, worry, the forward lean of concentration. Let them fall back, away from your ears, down toward the mattress or the cushions. Let gravity take their weight. Breathe. Your hands. Let your fingers uncurl slightly. There is nothing to grip tonight, nothing to hold. Let the hands be open, loose, still. Your chest and belly. With each inhale, let the breath expand gently into the front of your body. And with each exhale, let the belly fall, the chest soften, the whole front of your body releasing its tension into the quiet air. Your legs, heavy, long, still. The muscles of the thighs and calves, which have been carrying you through the day, can finally let go. They don't need to be ready to move. They can simply be there, resting, warm and still. Your feet, all the way to the tips of your toes. Let your whole body be here, heavy and warm and at rest. There is one more thing I want to share with you tonight before the words begin to slow and the narration begins its gentlest descent toward silence. I want to tell you about sleep's relationship with time. Sleep doesn't happen on demand, can't be forced or willed into existence. It arrives, like most good things, when the conditions are right and when you've stopped standing in its way. But there is something else about sleep and time that I find deeply reassuring. Sleep doesn't require that you be unconscious to be doing its work. The early stages of sleep, those light stages of hypnagogic drifting, the alpha and theta states, are already restorative. Your heart is already slowing. Your cortisol is already beginning its nightly decline. Your body temperature is already dropping toward the range that supports deep rest. Even lying still, even just resting without sleep, has measurable benefits compared to being active. Your body is constantly doing what bodies do, maintaining itself, repairing, processing, balancing. Rest supports all of this, even if the specific and extraordinary processes of deep sleep haven't fully engaged yet. This means that the time you spend in this soft, dark, quiet place, even if sleep comes slowly, even if the mind still runs a little, is not wasted. You are resting. Your body is being held. The night is doing its gentle work on you, even as you wait. The waiting itself is a kind of rest. Your nervous system has been listening to these words. Not in the way a human mind listens to language, not consciously processing each sentence and weighing its meaning, but in a deeper, more fundamental way. The slow pace of these words, the soft and unhurried rhythm of them, the consistent absence of alarm or urgency. These are signals to your nervous system, signals that the environment is calm, that nothing needs to happen, that the night is safe and still and there is nowhere you need to be except right here. Your body responds to the environment it's in, and the environment of this moment, the quiet, the darkness, the slowness of the breath and the words, is one that says, you can let go now. It is safe to let go. Somewhere in the back of your mind, the adenosine is still gathering. The homeostatic pressure for sleep is still building, or has already built to the point where it would need only the slightest encouragement to tip you over the threshold. The sympathetic system, perhaps, is a little quieter now than it was when you lay down. The noradrenaline has begun to clear. The cortisol is on its nightly decline. The pineal gland is producing its melatonin, sending its quiet message of darkness and rest through the chemistry of your blood. Your suprachiasmatic nucleus, that tiny but extraordinary master clock, is coordinating all of this. It has been doing this your entire life without a moment's rest, keeping you synchronized to the turning of the earth, to the cycling of light and dark, to the ancient rhythm that all life on this planet has followed since the very first organisms evolved to track the sun. You are part of that rhythm. You have always been part of it. And tonight, like every night, that rhythm is drawing you toward rest. Let the breath slow, not as an effort, just as a permission. The breath is allowed to slow. The body is allowed to be still. The mind is allowed to drift. If thoughts come, let them come. Let them float past like the distant sounds of the world outside. Present, but not requiring anything of you. You don't have to follow them. You don't have to resolve them. They can exist without your full attention tonight. You've been thinking all day. You've been attending and processing and responding all day. And that work is done now. The day is finished. Whatever it contained, whatever was left undone, whatever was difficult, whatever is still waiting, it will be there in the morning, and you will meet it then with whatever clarity and energy sleep has given you. But that is tomorrow's concern. Tonight there is only this, the quiet of the room, the warmth of the blankets, the slow movement of the breath, the gentle heaviness of a body that has worked and is now, finally, being allowed to rest. The brain, as it moves towards sleep, begins to let go of certain distinctions that wakefulness maintains. The boundary between self and environment softens. The internal narrative, that constant running commentary of the mind, begins to fragment into something more like poetry than prose. Images arise without context. Associations form and dissolve. The dreaming mind is already beginning to stir at the edges of consciousness. This is a good sign. This is the beginning of the transition. Your amygdala is quieter now. The alarm threshold is rising, meaning it would take more to trigger it, more to pull you back to full wakefulness. The prefrontal cortex, the thinking, planning, worrying brain, is beginning to power down into its nighttime mode. Its grip on the story of the day, on the worries and plans and evaluations, is loosening. This is not a loss. This is a gift the night gives you. The release from the need to manage yourself, from the continuous effort of being someone who is awake and functioning and navigating a complicated world. For the next few hours, you don't have to navigate anything. The navigation can stop. In the depths of sleep, something remarkable happens. In the deepest stages of non-REM sleep, the brain transitions into a state of large, synchronized oscillations, those slow delta waves rolling through the cortex like waves across a deep and still ocean. And in this state, the brain and body undergo a kind of deep reset that nothing else, no meditation, no rest, no quiet activity, can fully replicate. The pituitary gland releases growth hormone in pulses. The immune system conducts its most intensive maintenance work. The liver processes the metabolic byproducts of the day. The muscles undergo repair at the cellular level, the microdamage from daily activity being knitted back together by processes that can only fully operate in the deep sleep state. The brain itself is being cleaned. Through the glymphatic system, a network of fluid channels surrounding the brain's blood vessels, cerebrospinal fluid flows through the sleeping brain, washing out toxins and waste products that accumulated during waking hours. This system, discovered only in 2013 by neuroscientist Maiken Nedergaard and her colleagues, is vastly more active during sleep than during wakefulness. It may be one of the primary reasons that sleep is so critical to brain health across a lifetime. All of this is happening or is preparing to happen in your body tonight. You don't have to do anything to make it happen. You just have to allow it, to make the space for it, to give the body the conditions it needs. The quiet, the darkness, the relative stillness, and then to get out of the way. Let's stay here for a moment, in this softness. There is no hurry. There is nowhere this narration needs to rush toward. The whole point of being here together in the dark is the slowness of it. The way a long and unhurried voice can become a kind of company, something steady and gentle to rest against while the body does its quiet work. So let's keep going. Let's keep learning slowly together. There is something worth understanding about the nature of wakefulness itself, about what it actually means for a brain to be awake, and why that state is so energetically expensive that the body cannot sustain it indefinitely. Every waking hour, your brain is consuming an extraordinary amount of energy. Although it makes up only about 2% of your body weight, the brain uses roughly 20% of the body's total energy supply. It is one of the most metabolically active organs in the known animal kingdom. And all of that activity, all of that firing and processing and connecting and communicating generates waste. Metabolic byproducts, cellular debris, proteins that accumulate in the spaces between neurons and, if left unchecked, begin to interfere with the delicate signaling that keeps the brain running smoothly. The brain needs to clean itself, and for most of human history, no one knew how it did this. Scientists understood that the brain was protected by something called the blood-brain barrier, a highly selective filter that prevents most substances in the bloodstream from entering the brain's delicate environment. But this same barrier meant that the brain couldn't simply flush its waste products into the blood the way other organs can. There was no obvious drain, no obvious cleanup mechanism, until 2013. In 2013, a neuroscientist named Maiken Nedergaard and her colleagues at the University of Rochester published a discovery that fundamentally changed how we understand the sleeping brain. They described a system which they named the glymphatic system that uses the brain's blood vessels as a kind of plumbing network for waste removal. Here is how it works. Surrounding every blood vessel in the brain are specialized cells called astrocytes, star-shaped support cells that form a kind of sleeve around the vessels. Cerebrospinal fluid, which normally flows through the spaces around the brain and spinal cord, can be pumped through these sleeves between the astrocytes and the vessel walls, flowing through the brain tissue and collecting waste products along the way. This fluid then exits through a parallel set of channels, carrying the metabolic debris with it, draining it away from the brain and into the lymphatic system of the body, where it can be processed and eliminated. The glymphatic system is ingenious. It is elegant. And it is, according to Nedergaard's research, almost exclusively active during sleep. During wakefulness, the brain cells are large and swollen from their metabolic activity, and the channels through which the glymphatic fluid would flow are compressed and narrow. But during sleep, particularly during deep, slow-wave sleep, something remarkable happens. The brain cells actually shrink. They contract by roughly 60% of their waking volume, opening up the spaces between them and allowing the glymphatic fluid to flow through much more freely. The sleeping brain, in other words, literally opens its drains. Among the waste products cleared by this nighttime cleaning are proteins called amyloid beta and tau. These are the very proteins that accumulate in abnormal clumps and tangles in the brains of people with Alzheimer's disease. Night after night, in the people who sleep well, the glymphatic system quietly removes these proteins before they can build up. And in the people who chronically undersleep or who sleep poorly, the clearance is incomplete, and the proteins accumulate just a little more than they should. This is not meant to alarm you. It is meant to deepen your understanding of why the body wants to sleep, why it insists on sleep, why it will eventually compel sleep even in the most resistant of nervous systems. The body knows that this cleaning must happen. It knows that the brain needs to shrink its cells and open its channels and flush the debris of consciousness away, every single night without exception. The drive towards sleep is not weakness. It is the body's understanding of something profound, that the brilliant, humming, endlessly active brain you use to navigate the world cannot sustain itself without this nightly act of maintenance. You are being cleaned tonight. Even as you lie here, the glymphatic system is preparing to do its work, waiting only for the depths of sleep to open the channels fully. Now take a breath with me, just one long, slow breath, in through the nose, feeling the air cool and quiet as it enters, and out through the mouth, a slow and releasing exhale that goes on just a little longer than you think it needs to. Notice the pause at the end of the exhale, that small, still moment before the next breath begins. Just rest there for a second. In that pause, the nervous system is at its most settled. There is no tension of inhale, no effort of exhale. Just a brief, still absence of breath. Just quiet. The next breath will come on its own. It always does. We've spoken about adenosine, that beautiful molecule of accumulated tiredness. And I want to return to it for a moment because there is more to understand about how it works, and understanding it more fully may make the tiredness you feel right now feel more meaningful, more respectful of what your body has been doing all day. Adenosine is a nucleoside. It's made up of adenine, one of the 4 building blocks of DNA, bonded to a sugar molecule called ribose. In the context of cellular energy, adenosine is the backbone of adenosine triphosphate, or ATP, the primary energy currency of every cell in your body. When a cell uses energy, ATP is broken down, and one of the byproducts of that breakdown is free adenosine, released into the surrounding tissue. In the brain specifically, neurons release adenosine as they fire, and adenosine then binds to specific receptors on the surfaces of other neurons, receptors called adenosine A1 and A2A receptors, and this binding has an inhibitory effect. Quiets neuronal activity. It reduces the rate of firing. It dampens arousal. The more adenosine that accumulates, the more inhibited neuronal activity becomes, and the more powerfully the brain is pulled towards sleep. Researchers call the accumulated adenosine pressure the homeostatic sleep drive, or process S, and it is one of the two primary forces governing when and how deeply you sleep. And here is something you might find genuinely interesting. Caffeine works precisely by blocking adenosine receptors. When you drink coffee, the caffeine molecules occupy the adenosine binding sites on your neurons, not activating them, but simply sitting there, preventing adenosine from attaching. The adenosine is still accumulating. It just can't deliver its message. The tiredness signal is blocked at the receptor. But when the caffeine eventually clears your system, which can take 6 to 10 hours depending on your individual metabolism, all of that accumulated adenosine floods in at once. This is the crash. The sudden wave of tiredness after the caffeine wears off is not the coffee making you tired. It is the hours of adenosine that were waiting to be heard, finally getting their message through. Right now, however many hours have passed since your last cup of coffee, the adenosine from today's wakefulness is doing its patient work. It has been building all day. It has been accumulating in the spaces between your neurons, pressing gently and persistently on the receptors that will call you towards sleep. And in the quiet of this room, without the stimulation of screens or conversations or decisions or deadlines, there is nothing blocking its message. Your body is tired. The chemistry is real. The call towards sleep is genuine. All that is needed is for the alarm to settle just enough to let the call be heard. I want to tell you something about the nature of nighttime that might shift the way you're experiencing these quiet hours, whether you're drifting towards sleep or still very much awake. For almost all of human history, night was genuinely, profoundly dark. There were no streetlights, no glowing screens, no refrigerator lights that flickered on in the small hours, no distant glow of a city blurring the horizon. There was only the darkness itself, thick, complete, intimate, punctuated by firelight if you were fortunate, and by the slow wheel of stars overhead. And in that darkness, the human relationship with nighttime was very different from what it is today. Anthropologist Carol Worthman, who has studied sleep across diverse human cultures, found that in many traditional societies, the division between sleep and wakefulness at night is far more fluid than the consolidated 8-hour block that modern sleep science takes as its standard. People in these societies often sleep in 2 or even 3 shorter periods, with periods of quiet wakefulness in between. Lying still, watching the fire, speaking in low voices, simply being present in the night without anxiety about the fact of being awake. The historian A. Roger Kirch, in his research into pre-industrial European history, found extensive evidence suggesting that before the widespread adoption of artificial lighting, Europeans commonly slept in 2 distinct phases. A first sleep of several hours, followed by a period of quiet wakefulness in the middle of the night, followed by a second sleep that lasted until morning. People used this middle-of-the-night wakefulness for gentle activity: prayer, reading, conversation, lovemaking. It was considered a normal and even valuable part of the night, not a disorder to be corrected. What does this mean for you, lying here in the night? It means that the experience of waking in the small hours, or of not falling immediately into sleep, is not a modern pathology. It is an ancient, deeply human experience. Your nervous system is doing what nervous systems have always done in the dark. cycling, adjusting, visiting lighter and deeper states, monitoring the environment with one ear while resting with the rest of itself. The expectation that sleep should be one long, unbroken, perfectly effortless event from the moment your head touches the pillow until morning, that expectation is new. It is, in evolutionary terms, almost brand new. And many of the difficulties people experience with sleep are at least partly a product of the anxiety created by that expectation, rather than any true disorder of the sleep system itself. If you wake in the night, you have not failed at sleeping. You have not broken something. You are experiencing something ancient, something woven into the biological inheritance of every person who has ever lived on this planet in the dark. Rest in that knowledge for a moment. Let it soften the edges of the night. Now let's breathe together again. Let your body sink just a little deeper into the surface beneath you. Not a dramatic shift, just the smallest surrender of whatever resistance is still there. The way snow settles slowly on a quiet field, each flake adding its infinitesimal weight until the surface is soft and undisturbed. Notice your belly. On the next inhale, let it rise first. Not your chest, just the belly, expanding softly outward as the diaphragm drops and air fills the lower lungs. And on the exhale, let the belly fall slowly all the way in as the diaphragm rises and the lungs empty from the bottom up. Belly rises, belly falls. Just this for a few breaths. The vagus nerve is listening. The parasympathetic system is responding. The body knows what slow breathing means. There is a part of the brain called the locus coeruleus, a small, dense cluster of neurons deep in the brainstem, bluish in color, which is how it got its name. Locus coeruleus is Latin for blue place. This small blue place is the brain's primary source of noradrenaline, the neurotransmitter we've been discussing as one of the key players in keeping the arousal system running. The locus coeruleus acts as a kind of broadcasting tower, sending noradrenaline signals out to nearly every region of the brain. When the locus coeruleus is active, the brain is alert, attentive, and ready to respond to whatever the environment demands. During wakefulness, the locus coeruleus fires at a steady rate, maintaining that background tone of alertness that allows you to function. During drowsiness, its firing rate decreases. And during deep sleep, it goes almost completely quiet. The broadcasting tower powers down. The noradrenaline signal fades. And the brain, released from that constant activating signal, can settle into the deep, slow oscillations of restorative sleep. One of the defining features of the hyperaroused nervous system is that the locus coeruleus doesn't quite power down the way it should in the evening. Keeps firing, keeps sending out its alerting signal. And every burst of that signal is the brain saying, "Stay ready. Don't go under. Something might need you." The locus coeruleus is also exquisitely sensitive to perceived threat. Any signal of danger, a sudden noise, an unexpected thought, a spike of anxiety, causes it to fire strongly and suddenly, flooding the brain with noradrenaline and jolting the entire arousal system awake. This is why a worrying thought in the night can feel so disproportionately powerful. It's not just a thought. It's a stimulus that activates the locus coeruleus, which then broadcasts noradrenaline across the entire brain, switching on the alert state in every region simultaneously. What began as a small, quiet worry becomes, within seconds, a fully activated nervous system. Heart quickening, thoughts racing, sleep receding back to the horizon. Understanding this doesn't stop it from happening, but understanding it changes your relationship to it when it does. Instead of being bewildered or frightened by the sudden alertness, you can recognize it. You can name what is happening. The locus coeruleus has fired. Noradrenaline is in the system. This will pass. The body will metabolize it. The broadcasting tower will quiet down again. And in recognizing it, in holding it with a degree of knowledge and even compassion, you interrupt the secondary fear response that would otherwise amplify the original signal. You don't add more activation on top of the activation that's already there. You just wait. You breathe. You let the noradrenaline do what noradrenaline always does in the absence of a real threat. Gradually clear from the synapses, return to baseline, and allow the quieter nighttime chemistry to resume its work. There is another system working quietly in your body tonight. It operates below the level of your awareness, and it has been doing so your entire life. It is called the endocannabinoid system, and it plays a role in sleep that researchers have only recently begun to fully appreciate. The endocannabinoid system is a network of receptors and signaling molecules found throughout the brain and body. It was first identified in the early 1990s during research into how the active compounds in cannabis affect the brain. Scientists discovered that the brain has specific receptors that bind to these compounds, but more importantly, they discovered that the brain produces its own compounds that naturally bind to these same receptors. These naturally produced compounds are called endocannabinoids, meaning cannabinoids that come from within. The two most studied endocannabinoids are called anandamide, a name derived from the Sanskrit word for bliss, and 2-arachidonyl-glycerol, which is mercifully abbreviated as 2-AG. These molecules serve many functions throughout the brain and body, but one of their most important roles is in regulating the sleep-wake cycle. Anandamide, in particular, has been shown to promote sleep onset. It tends to accumulate during periods of extended wakefulness, contributing to the growing pressure toward rest. And it interacts with the adenosine system, with which it shares some overlapping pathways, to deepen the signal for sleep as the night approaches. Anandamide also has anxiety-reducing properties. It dampens the activity of the amygdala, reducing the brain's sensitivity to threat signals, quiets the locus coeruleus. It promotes a sense of ease and groundedness that is, in some ways, the neurochemical signature of what we call relaxation. The body makes more anandamide in conditions of genuine rest and safety, low stress, gentle movement, time in nature, deep social connection. These are the conditions under which the endocannabinoid system tends to be well-resourced and well-functioning. Chronic stress, on the other hand, depletes this system. High cortisol over time reduces the activity of the endocannabinoid system, which is one of the reasons that people who are chronically stressed tend to feel not only tired and wired, but also anxious, disconnected, and unable to find the natural ease that should be available to them. This connection is important. It means that taking care of your nervous system, genuinely taking care of it over time, through rest and connection and moments of genuine stillness, isn't just psychologically beneficial. It is biochemically restoring the systems that make sleep and ease and a sense of safety in the world possible. You are doing that tonight, just by being here, just by lying still and breathing slowly and letting the words wash over you. You are giving your nervous system a period of reduced demand, a chance to begin restoring the chemistry of ease. Let me tell you something about the prefrontal cortex, the large, forwardmost region of your brain sitting just behind your forehead, because it is one of the main reasons the mind keeps running at night when you want it to stop. The prefrontal cortex is the seat of what neuroscientists call executive function. It is where planning happens, where abstract thinking lives, where you hold complex, competing pieces of information in mind simultaneously and weigh them against each other, where you simulate future scenarios, run mental rehearsals of conversations, consider consequences, make decisions. It is, in many ways, the most distinctly human part of the human brain. Other animals have prefrontal cortices, but none to the degree of complexity and relative size that humans do. Our large prefrontal cortex is one of the primary reasons we can do the things we do, build civilizations, make art, navigate intricate social relationships across decades and contexts. But the prefrontal cortex is also one of the main reasons that sleep is sometimes difficult, because the prefrontal cortex never quite accepts that it is done. There is always, from its perspective, one more thing to consider, one more scenario to run, one more problem that might benefit from a little more analysis before morning. It is, in the most charitable possible interpretation, trying to help. It is trying to prepare you. It is trying to make sure that when tomorrow comes, you are ready for whatever it brings. But the prefrontal cortex doesn't have a very good internal clock. It doesn't always know the difference between night, when preparation is not possible and rest is what's needed, and day, when active problem solving is appropriate and useful. It just keeps going, keeps generating content. It keeps producing the next thought and the next and the next, with the thoroughness and persistence that has made it such a remarkable evolutionary success. The way to work with the prefrontal cortex at night is not to fight it. Trying to force the mind to stop thinking creates its own kind of activity, a metacognitive loop in which the prefrontal cortex is now thinking about the fact that it's thinking and trying to stop and noticing that it hasn't stopped and trying harder. What works is redirection. Gentle, patient, consistent redirection towards something that doesn't engage the prefrontal cortex's planning and analyzing functions. Something passive, something sensory, the breath, the weight of the body, the faint sounds of the night, the darkness behind closed eyes. Every time you notice that the mind has wandered, and it will wander over and over because that is what minds do, you simply notice it without judgment and you bring your attention back. Back to the breath, back to the body, back to this room and this moment and the simple physical reality of being a body lying in the dark. This is not failure when the mind wanders. This is the practice, the noticing and the returning, the patient, gentle redirection. Every single time you do it, you are gently asking the prefrontal cortex to stand down, to rest its work for just this moment, to let the night have the authority that belongs to it. And over time, over many breaths and many gentle redirections, the body finds its way toward the stillness that sleep needs. Let's take another breath, this one for your mind. Imagine, if you're willing, that the thoughts passing through your awareness right now are like cars on a distant road. You can hear them faintly. You can see their lights, perhaps, if you look. But you're not in any of those cars. You're not driving anywhere. You're here, still, on a hillside above the road, watching from a comfortable distance. The cars come and go. Thoughts come and go. You don't have to get into any of them tonight. Just stay here, on the hillside, in the dark, watching from a comfortable, unhurried distance. Breathe. There is something called the default mode network that I want to tell you about because it speaks directly to the experience of lying awake with a running mind. The default mode network is a set of brain regions, including parts of the medial prefrontal cortex, the posterior cingulate cortex, and the hippocampus, that become active when the brain is not engaged in a specific external task. When you're not focusing on anything in particular, when your attention is turned inward, when you're daydreaming, remembering the past, imagining the future, or thinking about yourself and other people, this is the default mode network running. It's called the default mode because it is, in a sense, the brain's default state. When given nothing external to focus on, this is where the brain goes. It is the network of self-referential thought, of narrative, of the ongoing inner story of who you are and what your life means. And at night, when the external demands of the day have fallen away and the room is dark and quiet and there is nothing specific for the brain to do, the default mode network activates with full force. All of that energy that was directed outward through the day, toward tasks, toward conversations, toward the navigation of the external world, turns inward. And the inner narrator begins its nightly review. The memories of the day, the conversations that could have gone differently, the worries about tomorrow, the long-running stories about the self, what kind of person you are, whether you are doing enough, whether things will be okay. This is the default mode network doing what it was designed to do. It is trying to make sense of your experience. It is trying to integrate today's events into the broader story of your life. It is running the simulations and rehearsals that help you prepare for future social situations. It is processing the emotional content of the day's interactions. All of this is meaningful, important work, but it doesn't belong in the middle of the night when your body needs sleep. And the default mode network, like the prefrontal cortex, doesn't have a strong internal sense of when to stop. The science suggests that one reason meditation practices and relaxation techniques help with sleep is that they quiet the default mode network. By focusing attention on a specific, simple object, the breath, a word, the physical sensations of the body, these practices actively suppress the default mode network's activity and shift the brain into a different, quieter mode of processing. This is what we are doing together tonight. Every time you come back to the breath, every time you notice the weight of your body against the mattress, every time you feel the warmth of the blankets or the coolness of the air or the gentle rise and fall of your chest, you are giving your brain a concrete, simple, physical focal point. And in focusing there, the default mode network quiets just a little. The inner narrator softens its voice. The stories lose a little of their urgency. Not forever, not completely, just enough. It is worth saying something about the role that temperature plays not just in the physics of sleep onset, but in the felt sense of comfort and safety that supports it. There is a reason that being tucked into a warm bed feels like being cared for. There is a reason that the sensation of warm blankets and a cool pillow carries such deep associations with rest and security. It goes back further than any individual memory. It goes back to the earliest weeks of life, when warmth meant proximity to a caregiver, and cold meant separation and vulnerability. The thermoregulatory system, the brain's mechanisms for managing body temperature, is deeply intertwined with the systems that regulate fear and safety. Studies have shown that physical warmth has measurable effects on social trust and emotional openness. That holding a warm cup of tea can make a stranger seem more trustworthy. that cold environments can increase the activation of threat detection circuits. This is not coincidence. It is the deep interconnection of systems that evolve together in a world where thermal comfort and social safety often occurred simultaneously. Around the warmth of a fire, in the company of one's group, with the cold and darkness held at bay. When you are warm and comfortable in bed, your nervous system is receiving an ancient signal. You are not alone. You are not in the open. You are not exposed. The temperature of your immediate environment is telling the same story that your breath and the darkness of the room and the stillness of the night are telling together. You are safe. You can rest. Feel that now. Feel the warmth around you, the blanket or the sheet against your skin, the particular temperature of the air on your face. Cool enough to be refreshing, still enough to carry nothing alarming. The familiar weight and texture of the pillow beneath your head. All of this is information being delivered to your nervous system. All of it says the same thing. Safe, still, held, at rest. Let's spend a little time in the body itself, in the physical sensations of this moment. Because there is a kind of intelligence in the body that the thinking mind sometimes drowns out, and it is worth listening to. Your body right now is doing something remarkable. Your heart is beating, perhaps 60 to 70 times per minute, perhaps slower if you've been resting here for a while. Each beat is a coordinated electrical event. A wave of depolarization sweeping through the specialized muscle cells of your heart, causing them to contract in perfect synchrony, pushing blood through the chambers and out into the vessels of your body. Your lungs are exchanging gases. With each breath, oxygen is crossing from the air in your alveoli, tiny, grape-like sacs at the ends of your airways, into the red blood cells waiting in the capillaries that line their walls. And carbon dioxide, the waste product of cellular respiration, is crossing in the other direction, leaving the blood and entering the air you will exhale. Your kidneys are filtering your blood, removing waste products, adjusting the concentration of minerals and water to keep the chemistry of your blood in the narrow range that life requires. Your liver is processing the metabolic byproducts of the day. Your immune system is conducting its surveillance and maintenance work. Your neurons are firing in patterns that constitute your awareness of this moment. The sound of this voice, the awareness of your body, the thoughts that are passing through. All of this happening simultaneously without your management, without your effort, without even your awareness for most of it. You have never not been doing this. Since the moment you were born. Since long before that, in fact, since the very first cells that would become you began dividing in the earliest days of your existence, your body has been running these processes without interruption. Through every night you have ever slept, through every night you have ever lain awake, through every moment of joy and difficulty and ordinary unremarkable time, the body has been faithfully doing its work. It has never stopped. It has never forgotten. It has never needed to be reminded. There is something extraordinarily reassuring about this, if you let yourself feel it. Underneath all the uncertainty, underneath all the effort of consciousness, underneath the running thoughts and the unresolved worries, there is this, a body that knows how to be alive, a biological system of almost incomprehensible complexity and reliability, doing 10,000 things at once, holding you in the continuity of existence from one moment to the next. You don't have to run this. You just have to be in it. And perhaps one of the deepest things that sleep asks of us that the nervous system asks of us when it finally quiets enough to let us go, is exactly that. To stop running it, to let go of the management, to set down the monitoring and the organizing and the constant checking of how things are going. To trust, for these few dark hours, that the body knows what it's doing, that the systems are working, that the night will hold what needs to be held and process what needs to be processed and restore what needs to be restored. This surrender is not weakness. It is one of the most profound things a conscious being can do, to yield to the unconscious processes that sustain it, to let the body's deep intelligence take over from the mind's endless work. When sleep comes, and it will come as it always comes because the body insists on it, this is what will happen. The supervisory mind will step aside. The prefrontal cortex will power down. The default mode network will quiet. The locus coeruleus will stop broadcasting. And in that interior silence, the deeper processes, the memory consolidation, the emotional integration, the cellular repair, the glymphatic cleaning, the restoration of neurochemical balance, will proceed with the quiet efficiency of systems that have been doing this work far longer than consciousness has existed to observe them. You have been doing this since before you had language to describe it. The first sleep you ever slept, you slept without any concept of sleep, without any understanding of what it was or why you needed it or whether you were doing it correctly. You simply slept because the body knew. The body still knows. The night is deep now. Or perhaps it feels that way. There is a particular quality to the awareness in these late hours, a softening of sharp distinctions, a loosening of the usual grip that the daytime mind keeps on the threads of thought. The hours after midnight carry their own kind of silence, not just the absence of sound, but an active, full quality to the quiet, as though the world has settled all the way down to its foundations, as though the usual hum of activity has stilled and left something more fundamental in its place. In many spiritual and contemplative traditions, this hour, the deep middle of the night, is considered sacred, a time when the veil between ordinary consciousness and something larger becomes thinner. Whether or not you hold any particular spiritual view, there is something in this intuition that resonates with what neuroscience tells us about the late-night brain. In the deepest stages of sleep, the brain generates slow waves that sweep across its surface in long, rolling patterns. These waves, visible on the EEG as slow delta oscillations, have a remarkable property. They synchronize. Neurons across wide areas of the cortex begin firing together in a kind of coordinated pulse. On then off, active then still. This alternating rhythm, the up state and the down state as scientists call it, repeats several times per minute in deep sleep, and it is during the down states, the moments of near silence, that the brain seems to do some of its most important consolidation work. It is as though the brain, in the deep of the night, finds its way to a kind of collective quiet, a momentary ceasing, a breath between the notes. And then the up state returns and the neurons fire again, and the slow wave rolls on to the next region, and the work of the sleeping brain continues. All of this while you are simply here, simply breathing, simply lying still in the dark. Let your breath be very gentle now, so gentle you can barely feel it, just the faintest movement of air at the edge of your nostrils, just the softest rise and fall of your chest or your belly. Let it be as quiet as possible, as slow as it wants to be. There is nothing your breath needs to accomplish right now. It doesn't need to be deep or healing or therapeutic. It just needs to continue as it always continues, as it has always continued, as it will continue through the rest of this night without any effort from you at all. Let the breath breathe itself. Let the body be exactly as it is. Let the night be exactly as it is. One last thing I want to offer you before we let the words grow truly slow and sparse, before we give the silence the space it's been patiently waiting for. I want to talk about trust. Not trust in anything large or abstract. Just the small, quiet trust of lying in the dark and believing that the body knows what to do, that the systems are working, that sleep is not something that has abandoned you but something that is always moving toward you, always just one layer of relaxation deeper than wherever you currently are. Sleep is not a reward for doing everything right. It is not a grade you earn by being calm enough or still enough or good enough at letting go. It is a biological need and a biological process, as impersonal and inevitable as hunger or thirst, and like hunger, it will always eventually be met. The body wants equilibrium. Every system we've discussed tonight, the adenosine, the cortisol, the melatonin, the vagus nerve, the locus coeruleus, the glymphatic system, all of them are oriented toward the same deep biological balance, toward the rhythm of rest and wakefulness that has sustained human life since its beginning. You are part of that rhythm. You are held by it whether you feel it or not. And the difficulty of some nights does not mean you have been excluded from it. It means the balance has been tipped by the particular pressures of the particular life you are living, and that the body is working with all of its intelligence and all of its persistence to find its way back. It will find its way back. It always does. There's a softness that comes in the late night, a particular quality of the silence at 2 or 3 in the morning that is different from the silence of 10 o'clock. Something in the world itself seems to breathe more slowly. The traffic stills. The last lights in neighboring windows go dark. Even the air feels different, cooler, quieter, more settled. This is the hour of deep sleep in healthy sleepers. The hour when the body's recovery is most intensive. The hour when the dream work of REM sleep in later cycles begins its emotional sorting and processing. Whether you're awake in these hours or asleep, whether you're drifting or lying still, the night is doing something with you. You are in it. You are part of its rhythm, and it is holding you as it holds everything living, gently, without effort, in the dark. Let your body be heavy now, really heavy. Let every limb, every joint, every muscle release what it's been holding. Let the mattress take your full weight. Let the pillow receive your head. Let the blankets rest against you. Let all of it just be there, touching you softly, holding you in the small, warm world of your bed. Your feet are still. Your legs are heavy. Your abdomen is soft. Your chest rises and falls, quietly, steadily. Your arms are loose. Your hands are open. Your face is calm. Your jaw is slack. Your eyes are still behind their closed lids. You are lying in the dark. You are breathing slowly. You are safe. There is nothing you need to do right now. Nothing you need to be. Nothing you need to fix or understand or manage. The night is yours, and it asks nothing of you except this: to be here gently and to let the body do what it knows how to do. The science of sleep, in the end, leads back to something very simple. The body wants to sleep. It is oriented toward sleep in the same way that a river is oriented toward the sea, not by effort, but by the natural pull of its own design. Every system we've discussed tonight, The homeostatic pressure of adenosine, the circadian rhythm of the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the falling cortisol, the rising melatonin, the parasympathetic activity of the vagus nerve, the cooling of the core, the slowing of the brain waves, all of these systems are working toward the same end. Sleep is not something you have to manufacture. It's something you have to allow. The work of tonight is the work of allowing, of letting the conditions be what they are, of releasing the effort and the urgency and the monitoring, of trusting, as strange as it might feel to trust, that the body knows what it's doing. It does. It has always known. The thoughts are getting slower now. You can feel it, perhaps. The associations between one thought and the next are loosening. Images appear without preamble. A face, color, a fragment of music, a room you were in once a long time ago. This is the hypnagogic drift beginning. This is the threshold. You don't need to grasp at it. You don't need to identify it or catalog it or make sure you're doing it correctly. Just let it be. Let the thoughts become less coherent. Let the narrative dissolve. Let the dreaming mind take over from the thinking mind, gently, naturally, the way darkness takes over from light at the end of the day. Not all at once, but in a slow and beautiful gradation. The nervous system is quiet. The alarm is resting. The cortisol is low. The melatonin is high. The adenosine has done its work. The body is heavy and warm and still. And somewhere in the soft and patient dark of this night, sleep is coming for you. Not because you've earned it or figured it out or finally managed to be calm enough, but because this is what night is for. Because this is what the body is for. Because rest is as natural and inevitable as the turning of the earth, and you are simply waiting gently for the turning to reach you. If you can hear these words, you are still here, and that is fine. There is no deadline. There is no test. Just let the voice grow quieter in your awareness. Let it become one more soft thing in the landscape of the night, like the sound of rain against glass, or the distant hum of the world at rest. Something you can hear without needing to follow. Let your breath slow even further. Let the gaps between thoughts grow longer. Let the body be as heavy and still as it wants to be. And when the words fade and the silence fills the space where they were, just let that be fine. Let the silence be welcome. Let the dark be gentle. Let the night do its ancient, faithful work. You are safe. You are resting. And sleep, when it comes, will come quietly, like a friend who knows the way. Sweet dreams. Thank you for spending part of your night here, in this quiet place, exploring the remarkable science of the body that carries you through the world. If this video helped you find some rest tonight, please consider leaving a like. And if you'd like to keep exploring the science of sleep with us, subscribe to Deep Science Sleep. Every week, we bring you new journeys through the neuroscience of rest, told in the language of the night. Sleep well.